guys. This is part two of the story about myself that I've been telling. I want to thank everyone that has come into the channel and posted comments. Mostly family members at this point, but I mean, that's completely fine. I just appreciate them even looking at something like this and giving me, positive feedback. This whole process for me has been it's been super difficult, but it's also been a lot more motivating than I thought it would be. I have a tendency to do things once or twice, and if I'm not like incredibly good at it or something, like I just don't want to do it anymore. I think a lot of people are probably like that, right? You lose interest after a period of time if you don't latch on to something quick, or you don't see like tangible results really quickly. But this is obviously, I'm a complete novice with YouTube. Microphone quality, lighting, all that stuff. Like that's not really a top priority for me, right? The most important thing is to just tell the story, get my story out there. And again, I want to use that story. It's kind of like a platform, a structure to work off of, so that when I start talking about things like, how mental health has impacted me, or ways that I have struggled in particular times of my life with certain things, or tricks, mind tricks, psychological things that I've done to help me. When I'm making additional content in that area, or just trying to provide, like I said, any sort of inspiration or feedback, or tools that other people can use. I didn't want anyone to look at that information and be like, well, who is this guy, right? He's not according to a degree or any type of certification, or diploma or anything like that. Like he has no experience in the mental health space from an educational perspective. So like, who's this guy talking about these things he's talking about, or trying to give advice, or trying to help people? You know what I mean? So I didn't want people to think that I was just kind of coming out of left field with all this. So I thought it was important to at least, like I said, build a structure, give everyone at least a basic understanding of my story, or at least as much as I can remember, because as I said, my memory is pretty much shot. My long-term memory is pretty much shot. So where did we end off? So we ended off, basically, my freshman year of high school was in a couple different high schools. I had mentioned, my mom got remarried. My father also got remarried. My father at the time was living in an apartment. So my sophomore year of high school, eventually he was no longer in that apartment. He was in an apartment in Danbury. It was a little bit bigger. He moved out of the Naugatuck one. And that was kind of when I made my decision to move in with him. Was the end of my freshman year of high school, starting my sophomore year of high school. Again, now timelines and exact times that all these things transpired, it's up in the air. It's a general range, but as far as being exact, it's not going to be, because again, I'm working off of a lot of incomplete information, because that's basically what my memory is. Like I said, it's a bunch of flashcards, pictures, that I go back to try to pull information from, but I can't put years on anything, or lengths of time on anything necessarily. It's kind of just it's just the best I can do. So the accuracy may be a little off, but most important thing is just kind of going through it, right? So my sophomore year and my junior year of high school were pretty much abysmal as far as my grades are concerned. Now, don't get me wrong, I've never been like a good student. I struggled a lot with paying attention in school. My primary focus in school was to make other people laugh and kind of goof off and be funny, because I wanted everybody to like me. So and I did that to my detriment, basically, right? I got in trouble all the time. I was getting called to the principal's office all the time, but for whatever reason, it didn't really bother me. but I wasn't studying, I wasn't doing homework, I wasn't doing any of that stuff. My freshman year of high school, I was involved in sports. I played tennis, but then my sophomore and junior year, pretty much gave up on that. I was more interested in playing video games or playing magic cards or finding ways to invest my time in things that I was actually interested in, opposed to books and school and stuff like that. So going through high school, I already kind of felt like I was working at an extreme disadvantage just because everyone around me was doing really well in school, and they were telling me what they were all going to be when they were growing up, and I was just like, I don't know, I'm going to play a card game professionally or, something else. I didn't really have any aspirations, no targets, nothing. I mean, it was kind of like lost. So, as I'd mentioned, my mom wasn't giving me any attention. She was dealing with the new stepdad and starting a new family and all of that. In fact, I distinctively remember it was either my sophomore or junior year of high school. I don't remember which one, but it was my birthday. My mom was supposed to be coming to pick me up for like a birthday dinner or something, and she never showed up. Just decided not to come. And no birthday card, no happy birthday, nothing. And I mean, at this point, I'm kind of like 14, maybe 15, and my parents lived 40 minutes from each other. So it's kind of inexcusable, right? To forget your son's birthday. At the time, I didn't think that way. As a grown-up, I obviously think that way. My thought process was a little bit different when I was a kid. I was just like, well, she doesn't love me, or she's investing her time in things that she cares about more, you know what I mean? So that was that. The situation with my dad was, my dad and I had a good relationship, really good relationship. He was always my idol, someone I looked up to. And when his new wife moved in with us, again, dealing with another situation where you've got a bunch of attention that was being put on me. I was my dad's primary focus, especially when I moved out of my mom's house, because, he went from having no children to now having one child back, right? Because my sister was still with my mom, but at least he had me there to, because he was dealing with a lot too. He got divorced and he was involved in a new relationship, but also, divorces, I'm sure, are extremely difficult for the people going through them. I don't know. I've never been, never will be, but I'm sure it wasn't easy, not being able to see your children, I'm sure it wasn't easy. But when she came into the house, there was a huge struggle for, attention. Because I moved out of my mom's thinking me and my dad, ride or die, you know what I mean, till the end. This is all I need. And then she comes in the picture, and she was always very nice to me. But, again, not blaming anything on my dad, but I mean, his attention was towards her, a ton of his attention. You know what I mean? You're in your early 40s, and you've got you're just going through a divorce, and now all of a sudden you're dating or married to somebody 20 years younger than you. I mean, obviously that's going to draw a lot of your attention, right? So I was kind of dealing with the same thing from both parents, so it forced me, like I said, to do terribly in school, never want to be in school. Getting off the bus, I remember, pretending like I was walking into high school, and I would just turn around and leave, go to like the internet cafe or go do something else at the time that, like I said, was more interesting. So that was a huge struggle for me. Anytime I had to do an oral presentation, I would just take a 0, because there was no way I was getting up in front of anybody to talk about anything school related. Which again is one of the reasons why like this type of stuff has been so hard for me to do for so long. Just the social anxiety, or caring so much about what other people think, so much so that you can't even like get up and talk about like a book report or something. I would just be like, nope, I'm not doing it. Give me a 0, thanks, and move on. It was just normality for me. So then I got through my junior year of high school. At this point, I was pretty sure I wasn't going to graduate in 4 years. I needed an ungodly amount of credits in order to graduate. So I wasn't exactly sure what the strategy was going to be going into my senior year. And then my father was working for a bar. He was a manager at a bar. And again, the details of all of this are going to be just my best recollection, right? Because I just remember what I remember. So some family members might listen to this and say, well, that's not accurate, and it could be wrong. I'm just going off of what I know. But the one thing I can be certain of is whatever I'm going to say is going to be what I constitute as the truth. I'm not going to fabricate anything or make up anything to have anybody feel bad for me. Like I said, I did plenty of that on my own when I was younger. That's the last thing I want. I don't want attention from this. I don't want sympathy. I just want to get my story out there, and hopefully it impacts somebody and can help, and that's really all I'm going for. A little bit of healing from my perspective as well, obviously. Just talking through all this and formulating it in my head is definitely helpful, and just kind of going through this part of my life again, I think is going to be kind of therapeutic in a sense. Because I'm obviously at a much better place now, but all this stuff had to happen in order for me to be where I am, right? So that's kind of the perspective that I take. I was dealt a pretty crappy hand in the grand scheme of things, but all those things have to happen in order for me to get where I am right now. And even though I still struggle tremendously with self-worth and lack of compassion for myself, and always worrying more about others than myself, and insecurities and anxieties and all of those things, I'm still in a way better spot than I've ever been in my life. Happier than I've ever been in my life. So I have a lot to be thankful for, but those things don't happen if all the bad stuff doesn't happen, right? So essentially, the way I remember it is my father was working at a bar, so he was gone late at night. He would leave sometime right after dinner and then not come back until like the middle of the night. So again, my stepmom and me kind of jousting back and forth for attention from my dad. I remember it was the 4th of July. I was playing football down the street with a bunch of buddies on a field. Again, this is my summer of my junior year. So I just turned 17 because my birthday was in May. So it's July 4th, playing football, or it might have been July 5th, whatever, but it was around that time frame. And we're playing football and it starts to rain. Well, obviously we're not going to play football in the rain, right? So I decided to go home at that point. When I went home, the kids that I was playing football with were kind of like bad kids in the neighborhood, and they had like a bunch of fireworks that they were going to be lighting off over the course of the weekend or whatever. I got my hands on, I think one of them, it might have been more than that, like little fireworks that were on the ground, like just loose ones. And I decided to take them home. Well, when I took them home, I went into the kitchen, and again, just kind of messing with my stepmom. My dad wasn't there. I walked up to her, and now, obviously, I know the firework's not going to light, right? Because the wick is completely soaked with water. So, I mean, it's not doing anything. My dad smoked cigarettes, so there were always lighters around the house. So I grabbed the lighter, and I walked up to my stepmom, and I'm a 17-year-old idiot, right? So I'm just pretending to light the fire, like lighting the lighter, and then trying to light the firework with her, like standing right next to me. Like, I don't know, to either throw it at her or blow it up or whatever the case may be. I don't really know what my thought process was at the time. Maybe to get attention, whatever. And this must have been maybe after school or something, because my dad hadn't gone to work yet, but he wasn't home. So he might have been like grocery shopping or something. Anyway, she freaks out, completely flips out, screaming, yelling at me. Next thing I know, she's on the phone. She's obviously calling my dad. I run upstairs, and I'm like, whatever. So at this point, I know, what's hitting the fan, right? So I'm like, I think I packed a bag, probably to go to like a friend's house or something. I didn't drive at the time, even though I was 17. I didn't have my license because, again, I was very unmotivated at this point to do pretty much anything. So I wasn't in any process of getting like a learner's permit or anything like that. My dad also didn't have a lot of money at the time, so affording a car was probably not even an option. because the car he was driving was an absolute piece of junk. So I don't really think it was within our budget for me to have anything. So I rode my bike everywhere. Or sometimes he would like let me drive his van to like go pick up Chinese food when I was like 15 or 16. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, even when I didn't have a driver's license. My dad was cool with that type of stuff. So anyways, I'm upstairs, I'm in the shower, and my dad comes home. And I knew he was coming home because I could hear the car, because again, piece of junk. So car comes in the driveway, door opens, I hear him and Liz downstairs talking. And then the next thing I know, I just hear these huge footsteps coming up the staircase. And the bathroom door opens, it was probably locked. My dad may have kicked it in. It might not have been locked, I don't remember. But the door opened, and there was nothing said, I don't believe. He just opened up the curtain, and again, I'm in the middle of taking a shower, and just starts wailing on me. So that was a pretty traumatic experience. What are you thinking? Again, I don't remember pretty much anything that he said, but it was probably somewhere along the lines of, what are you thinking? Why are you being an idiot? Like, and me defending myself, saying the firework wasn't going to light. Like, who cares? It's not a big deal. You know what I mean? So my father wasn't abusive consistently. And again, I think it's perfectly natural to talk about people that are no longer present with us in the best light possible, because obviously they're gone, they can't defend themselves. But again, I love my dad more than anything on planet Earth, period. You know what I mean? There isn't anything else more on Earth that I love than my father. So it's not like I'm trying to paint him in any type of bad light. But to my understanding, he grew up in an environment where he was abused physically, and he didn't do it to me all the time, but it definitely happened a decent amount of the time. Now, it was always never for no reason. It was always when I did something stupid, but he took the old school Portuguese approach of, taking care of it the way that he thought it was taken care of, right? So that was that situation. So I got done with the shower, packed a bag, and left, and went to my mom's. And I stayed with my mom for a couple of days, I think, maybe like 4 or 5. I don't remember exactly how long, but I was there for a while. And again, I had just moved out of there, so that was kind of a weird situation. But I didn't have anywhere else to go at that point, so I left. And then after being there for maybe 4 or 5 days, my dad calls my mom. Again, I think this is how it went. And said, let me talk to John. I pick up the phone. I don't remember the exact conversation, but the difference between my mom and my dad when they messed up was my dad would say sorry. My mom has never said sorry for anything in her life. So my dad apologized to me. Again, don't remember what he said, but it was probably something like, I shouldn't have acted in the way that I acted. You obviously know you did something wrong. I overreacted, something along those lines. I'm really sorry. Let's talk about this. Why don't you come home and we'll talk about it? And I don't know what time it was of day during the day at that point, but I'm pretty sure I said something like, okay, Dad, love you, don't worry about it. I'll talk to you. I'm going to stay one more night at Mom's and hang out with Al, who's my sister, and then I'm going to, then I'll come home. Then we can talk through it, because the plan was never to leave forever. It's just I didn't know what to do at that point. I was super embarrassed. I'd just gotten the crap beat out of me, completely naked in a shower. So the whole situation was kind of like, not something you encounter very often. But my intention was never to leave forever. I wanted to stay with my dad up until when I decided to go out on my own or whatever. But the reason why I started with that is because that phone call, that exchange, the physical argument that we had, me leaving, and then that phone call of him saying, we'll talk through it tomorrow, I'm sorry, I want you to come home, I love you, those types of things. that was the last conversation I had with him, because he was going to work that night, which was the reason why I couldn't go there to talk to him about it that day. And he never came back from work that day or that night. So essentially what happened was he was a manager at a bar, and I don't want to get into too many details because, again, I don't know completely what happened. I just been going off of what I remember and what I was told a long time ago. It's been 24 years now. He was the manager at the bar. He was trying to leave the position because he didn't want to do it anymore. But my father, again, didn't have an insane education or anything like that, but he was a hard worker and he always did what he could for his kids. So that was an opportunity where he could make a good amount of money under the table, cash, even though it wasn't the safest job in the world. But it, got me through Catholic school, like I said, 7th and 8th grade, which was very expensive. And, he was doing what he needed to do to provide. Pretty much what anyone would try to do in that situation, or any good person, right? So it was last call at the bar, and he was training this guy, Roger, I believe, to take his position. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. And him and Roger were essentially best friends. So Roger was there with him, and they were basically getting everybody to leave the bar. This was a bar in Danbury, Connecticut, which I don't think is open anymore, but it was kind of like pretty close to the area of where a large population of Portuguese people lived. So, there was a lot of Portuguese people around that area in Main Street, Danbury, whatever. So, it was the last call. They were trying to get everybody to leave. One guy wouldn't leave. So my dad was like, Roger, escort that guy out of the bar, get that guy to leave. So Roger went to grab the guy, I guess, because the guy was refusing to leave, and the guy had I think a really big trench coat on or something like that, and I would imagine he was intoxicated. And he pulls this foot-long hunting knife out of his trench coat or jacket or whatever he was wearing, and stabs Roger with it, I guess, because they're kind of wrestling or whatever, you know what I mean? Because he's trying to throw him out, and the guy won't leave. So I guess when my dad saw that, it's his best friend, or very good friend. I don't know the actual definition, but a very close person that he cares about. He sees that happening. Did the same thing I would have done in that situation. It's like, I got to help my friend out, right? You're not really thinking call 911 at that point. I mean, you could do that, but that might cause the guy to hurt Roger, you know what I mean, if you don't take action immediately. So he didn't have a gun. We never owned anything like firearms or weapons or anything like that, but what he did have was a little wooden billy club, the things you see the old school English cops and or London cops use. So I guess he grabbed that, ran around the bar, and the guy had his back to him, I believe, and hit the guy in the back with it or something like that. And the guy turned around, I guess, and I believe stabbed my dad in the shoulder and then slit his throat with the knife, supposedly. So again, I don't know exactly how it all transpired, but that was that. And then I guess the waitress that was there or was trying to help my dad when he was on the ground, I guess said that my dad's last words were something like "son of a bitch" or something like that, which makes complete sense because that sounds 1,000% like my father. So I'm not sure if he died on the scene or if he died in the hospital. But yeah, that's kind of how it went down. Again, an abbreviated version of it. So that was shortly after I talked to him on the phone. The next morning, I remember being at my mom's house, and she lived on this house that was kind of up on this hill, and it had these huge windows and a super long driveway. It was a 300-foot long driveway. It may have even been longer than that. But it went down into this gully almost, and then all the way up towards their house. So you could see cars coming from a good length of distance away, right? So I just remember seeing my grandma again. I don't know the order of the cars, but I just remember seeing like my grandmother's car, maybe my for sure like my aunt or uncle's car, and then maybe like another couple of cars. I don't remember everybody that was there, but I do remember the line of cars coming up my road. And I remember thinking to myself in my head as a 17-year-old, well, it's nobody's birthday. It's not a holiday. And my father's side and mother's side have always been like cordial with each other, but it's not like everybody in my family went out of their way to hang out together. Like the two different families didn't really coexist unless they needed to, which again is no fault to anybody. That's just the environment that it was, right? My dad's side was primarily hanging out with my dad's side. My mom's side was primarily hanging out with my mom's side, and they didn't really commingle unless it was like a big, huge family event, which we didn't really have a lot of. Yeah, something for like me and my sister, like a birthday or whatever. Like they would exchange pleasantries and stuff like that, but they didn't really have any type of relationship, really. At least to my understanding. Could be wrong. But I remember seeing my grandmother and my aunt and uncle, my grandmother being my mom's mom, and my aunt and uncle being my dad's sister and her husband coming up the driveway together. And I'm like, well, that's strange. Because again, it's not like they're hanging out every day, right? So my mom goes downstairs, I think, and met them in the garage, I believe. And I heard them talking. And then they came up the stairs and basically sat me down, I think, and or told me to sit down or something like that, which is weird because I think they told me to sit down, but I don't remember sitting down. I remember standing the entire time just because I was kind of like in a defensive mindset. Like at this point, I kind of have an idea that there's something going on. So I remember not wanting to sit down, but I may have been sitting down. And I'm pretty sure it was my Aunt Paula, my dad's sister, that did the talking. And she said, I mean, I know exactly what she said because this is the one thing I will never forget. She said, there's been an accident. And when she said there's been an accident, I'll be honest with you, I thought it was probably bad, but not as bad as what it actually was. But looking at it from her perspective, you know, when they were telling me that my dad was killed, they were the same age I am. They were the same age that I am now. So I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, and I'm trying to say, well, my grandmother wasn't, but my aunt and uncle were, right? So they were like 40 at the time, 41, because again, this was like 24 years ago. So I'm trying to think of how I would approach telling a 17-year-old and a 10-year-old that their dad was murdered on the spot when they clearly know what's going on, or at least have an idea. There really isn't any like fluffy way to deliver that news, right? So I think actually there's been an accident. Starting it with that was probably the best approach. Now, when I think of the word accident, and then I think of what happened, again, not knowing all the details, but knowing enough, the last thing that it was an accident, right? Because it's kind of hard to accidentally murder someone. And I'm not trying to dissect the whole conversation in a negative way or whatever. Like I said, in that spot, I have no idea how I would handle that situation. And it was incredibly brave of them to be able to do that. And throughout my life, there have not been a lot of certainties, but one thing that has been certain is my dad's side of the family and their undying and unconditional love for me, and they've always told the truth. They've always been honest. They've always been forthright, and they've always been loving and kind, and they've always accepted me at my worst and accepted me at my best. And I don't have a negative thing to say about any of them. I love them all unconditionally. After all this happened, it was my primary focus to stay as far away from them as humanly possible, because they just made me think about my father, and I was doing enough of that on my own. But as I got older, and over the last couple of years, I've made a very aggressive effort to spend more time with them, because I now understand that in a life that's been completely uncertain for me and been filled with trauma and terrible things, they've been the one constant, and I definitely took that for granted and underappreciated it when I was younger. And I definitely am trying to overcompensate for it now, because I want to give them as much love as humanly possible, because they deserve it. They've certainly earned it, and I have a great deal of internal pain when I think about the amount of time, and I kind of get choked up even talking about it, because it really bothers me a bunch. The amount of time that I wasted not spending time with them, and just trying to run as far away from that whole situation as I could, because I'm never going to get that time back. And just like the last conversation that I had with my dad, thinking that I was going to see him the following day, stuff happens that's out of your control. And I think the most important thing for people to realize when you live in a world where there's so many things that can happen that are bad, that are out of your control, is you want to make sure you're in the best position possible to not regret anything. That's probably the thing that I've learned more than anything in this whole entire journey that I've been on, is try to position yourself in a manner where if shit hits the fan, you don't regret anything. And what I mean by that is spend as much time with people that you love. Don't spend any time with people that you don't. Don't waste energy on things that you can't influence, can't control. It's wasted energy. Put your energy towards things that you're passionate about, the people that you're passionate about, the relationships that you have. Make your bubble, and when I say bubble, I mean the people that you surround yourself with. Make that bubble as small as possible and fill it with as much love as possible. Because the more people in life that you can count on, the better. Truthfully count on. Not think you can count on. Truthfully count on. There's a huge difference there. You have to know in your heart that the people that you are associated with, you can count on, regardless of the circumstances. And the way you find that out is through traumatic experiences, is through things that happen. Because when crazy things happen, people show you who they really are. The veil comes off, and they act the way that they are programmed to act. That's what people do. So when something really traumatic happens, there are going to be people that are going to be drawn to you and want to take care of you and want to love you and want to be there for you. And there's going to be people that are going to maybe point the finger at you, maybe disappear, maybe not speak to you, not communicate, maybe blame things on you, or try to get as far away from the situation as possible, and not provide any type of insight or any assistance whatsoever. And that is the true image of what somebody is. It's not what you see on social media. It's not what people tell you when you're face to face with them. It's not even what they're telling other people about you when you're not there. It's the way that they act when crazy stuff happens. That is how you find out who a person really is. So, this episode has already gone a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I think I've touched on a lot of stuff. But the primary thing I want everybody to get out of this is two things. One, You don't get this time back. Okay? The last physical conversation I had with my father was a fight where I got reprimanded. I deserved it, not the way that he did it, but I definitely deserved it. But the last physical interaction I had with him was that. Not the last conversation you want to have with your father. And then the last actual conversation I had with him was the phone conversation, which was, I love you, I'm sorry, I want to make this better, let's come home tomorrow and let's talk through this. And I remember being so relieved because my father was the one constant, at that time was the constant in my life. He was the one that, even though, a lot of his attention was going in a various direction at this time of my life, I was always priority number one. When I really needed to be priority number one, I was. So when he said that, and I knew that I was going to be able to go back and sleep in my bed and have my day-to-day that I was accustomed to and that I appreciated, I felt a sense of relief. I remember thinking the conversation tomorrow is going to be super awkward because I'm 17 years old, and conversations like that, unless you're grown up, are kind of awkward, right? Especially when you're talking to your dad, because you don't really know what to say. But I was just happy that I was going to be able to go home. But then you realize, to no fault of your own, that you're not going home. Quite the opposite. So so the first one, life is short, man. Appreciate every single second that you have with every single person that you have, and cherish it. Don't think about things that happened in the past. Don't think about your dreams and aspirations in the future. I think some of the best life advice is to live in the present, surround yourself with people that you love and care about deeply, and have as many experiences with those people as you can, because when it goes, and there's no takebacks, there's no redos, there's no instant replays. When it's over, it's over. Very important point that I'm trying to drive home is appreciate every day. And I try to do that. I try to put things in perspective on a daily basis, especially when things are not going well in my head. It's like, look, I'm here. Like, I'm doing all right. I've got a lot of things to be thankful for. You've got to keep things in perspective, because there's a voice in your head, man, and it's going to try to tell you different things that aren't true, especially when you've been through a bunch of trauma like I have. It's telling a story that you think is the definition of you, but it's not. It's the stuff that's happened to you that's speaking to you. It's not what defines you. So, live out every single second. Spend as much time with family members that you possibly can. And appreciate every day. That's the best advice that I can give, for sure. So, with that being said, we'll get into kind of everything that happened after the situation with my father. Kind of like where I was already struggling, but kind of like where my really bad struggles started to happen at that point. But again, I wanted to break this up into sections. It's already way longer than I wanted it to be, but this was an important one. So I knew it was going to be a little bit longer. But so next one up is I'm going to talk about moving in with my grandmother, how that all happened, and then going back to live with my mom, and then how I kind of temporarily got my life back on the right track, and then got derailed again, and that'll be kind of like a constant thing. You know what I mean? Feeling like I'm in a better spot, and then self-sabotaging, and appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for the comments. Anybody that sees this, take what I said seriously, because again, I'm coming from real life experience. This isn't a fairy tale. This is stuff that actually happened. So hopefully some people can get something from this, and if not, at least I was able to talk this through, and my family will see it, and I want them to know that I love them very much, and I think about them on a continual basis, more so than they'll ever understand. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So be good, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.